The modern workplace is changing. The COVID-19 pandemic forced many companies to adopt remote work. Employees enjoyed the flexibility and autonomy. As the pandemic recedes, many companies are calling employees back to the office. These return-to-office mandates are facing resistance. Coffee badging is a subtle form of protest. It involves employees using their company ID cards to register their presence at the office. They do this for a very short time, often just long enough to grab a coffee. This seemingly innocuous act carries a powerful message. It highlights the growing disconnect between employers and employees. Coffee badging is a relatively new phenomenon. It emerged in the wake of the COVID-19 pandemic. The term itself is a play on words. It combines the office ritual of grabbing a coffee with the idea of badging in. It's a symbolic act of defiance. This subtle form of protest highlights the changing dynamics of the workplace. At its core, coffee badging is about minimal compliance. Employees are physically present in the office just long enough to be registered. This minimal presence allows them to avoid repercussions for non-compliance. At the same time, it sends a clear message. They are not happy about being forced back to the office. Coffee badging speaks volumes about the shifting power dynamics between employers and employees. From tracking to protest, the evolution of the security card. The security card, once a mundane tool for monitoring attendance, has taken on a new meaning. It has become a symbol of resistance against rigid return-to-office mandates. The act of scanning a security card now carries a sense of defiance. This shift highlights the need for organizations to be more attuned to employee dissatisfaction. Employers believe in the irreplaceable value of in-person interactions. They argue that being physically present fosters community and collaboration. There's a concern that remote work can lead to silos, hindering the free flow of ideas. Employers worry that without informal interactions, company culture might suffer. The office represents a shared commitment to the company's goals. Employees view the return-to-office mandate differently. They argue that the benefits of remote work, such as increased flexibility and reduced commuting time, far outweigh the advantages of being in the office. The pandemic forced a global experiment in remote work, and for many, it was a success. They discovered they could be just as productive from home. Remote work allows for greater autonomy and control over one's schedule. A clash of cultures. Traditional versus modern work models. The standoff over return-to-office mandates highlights a fundamental clash of cultures. The traditional model struggles to accommodate the changing needs of a workforce that values autonomy and work-life balance. Employers who cling to the traditional model risk alienating valuable employees. Finding a solution requires open communication and a willingness to compromise. Urban revival and economic recovery. The push for a return to the office extends beyond the individual workplace. Governments see a return to physical workplaces as crucial for economic recovery. Urban centers rely heavily on the daily influx of workers. Policies that encourage a return to the office are part of a larger strategy to revitalize downtown areas. This push often clashes with employees' desire for flexibility. The real estate dilemma. Another force driving return-to-office mandates is the state of commercial real estate. Companies have invested heavily in office spaces, and these investments are under scrutiny. Empty office buildings represent a significant financial liability. The real estate industry has a vested interest in seeing workers return to offices. This creates a powerful lobby advocating for a return to traditional work models. The political and economic forces at play often create a misalignment of priorities. Employees prioritize flexibility, autonomy, and work-life balance. Employers prioritize in-person collaboration, company culture, and the bottom line. This misalignment is further complicated by political pressure on governments to focus on economic recovery. Addressing this requires open dialogue and a willingness to explore new, flexible work models. To understand coffee badging, we need to delve into psychological reactance. This theory suggests that when individuals feel their freedom is threatened, they experience reactance. The return to office mandate is perceived as an infringement on the autonomy enjoyed during remote work. Coffee badging becomes a way to assert autonomy and regain a sense of control. By adhering to the letter of the policy while rejecting its spirit, employees push back against the perceived threat to their autonomy. Self-determination theory posits that humans need to feel competent, autonomous, and connected. When these needs are met, individuals are more motivated and engaged. The return to office mandate can undermine the need for autonomy. Coffee badging becomes a way for employees to reclaim some of that lost control. It's a way to signal that they are active agents in their own work lives. The concept of the psychological contract refers to the unwritten set of expectations between employers and employees. The shift to remote work led to a renegotiation of this contract. The return to office mandate can be perceived as a breach of this renegotiated contract. Coffee badging becomes a way for employees to express dissatisfaction with this perceived breach. It's a reminder that the psychological contract cannot simply revert to its pre-pandemic state without acknowledging the shift in employee expectations. Whispers of discontent coffee. Badging in the context of quiet resistance. Coffee badging stands out as a unique form of employee protest. It's a subtle yet powerful way for employees to express their dissatisfaction without making a scene. It's quiet, subtle, and avoids direct confrontation. Employees use their coffee breaks as a form of silent rebellion, a way to push back against policies they find unfair. Unlike a loud rally or a strongly worded petition, coffee badging operates in the shadows. It's a form of protest that flies under the radar. It whispers its discontent rather than shouting it from the rooftops. This makes it a particularly intriguing form of resistance. This makes it particularly interesting in the context of other quiet resistance strategies emerging in the modern workplace. Employees are finding new ways to voice their concerns. Think of it as a workplace whisper network in action. These informal channels of communication can be surprisingly effective. It spreads through informal channels. Often during those quick coffee breaks, it ironically leverages. These moments become opportunities for employees to share their frustrations. One employee tells another about this method of subtly pushing back against the return to office mandate. The idea spreads quietly but effectively. This sharing of tactics can create a sense of solidarity among colleagues, even without explicit organization or leadership. It fosters a sense of community and shared purpose. This quiet nature makes coffee badging difficult for employers to address directly. It's hard to pinpoint and even harder to discipline. It's hard to discipline an employee for simply following the letter of the attendance policy, even if their heart isn't in it. This ambiguity works in the employee's favor. This ambiguity is part of what makes it an effective, albeit quiet, form of protest. It's a way to push back without overtly breaking any rules. It highlights the growing disconnect between management's expectations and the workforce's lived experience. This gap is becoming more apparent. However, the lack of open dialogue can also be problematic. Without clear communication, misunderstandings can fester. While coffee badging might seem like a low-risk way to express dissatisfaction, it doesn't necessarily lead to constructive solutions. It's a temporary fix, not a long-term strategy. It might even exacerbate existing tensions if employers feel their efforts to reestablish a sense of normalcy are being met with passive resistance. This can lead to a cycle of frustration on both sides. The escalation risk. From coffee breaks to quiet quitting. The emergence of coffee badging should be a wake-up call for employers. It's a symptom of a larger trend of disengagement and disillusionment among workers, which has been growing over time. This trend, often referred to as quiet quitting, goes beyond simply minimizing time spent in the office. It reflects a deeper sense of dissatisfaction. It encompasses a broader withdrawal of enthusiasm and discretionary effort, which can be detrimental to overall team dynamics. Quiet quitters might still fulfill their basic job duties, but their lack of engagement is palpable. However, they're no longer going above and beyond. which can be a significant loss for any organization. They're not volunteering for extra projects, which means fewer innovative ideas and initiatives. Staying late to meet deadlines, which can delay project timelines, or actively participating in company events, leading to a less cohesive work environment. This lack of enthusiasm can have a ripple effect, impacting team morale, productivity, and ultimately, the bottom line. It can also affect the overall workplace culture. While coffee badging might seem like a relatively harmless form of protest, it can be a slippery slope towards quiet quitting. If employees feel their concerns about returning to the office are not being heard or addressed, they may become increasingly disengaged and disheartened. If employees feel their concerns about returning to the office are not being heard or addressed, they may become increasingly disengaged, leading to a decline in overall job satisfaction. This can create a vicious cycle where employers, sensing this disengagement, double down on efforts to enforce in-office presence, further alienating employees in the process, making them feel undervalued and unheard. To avoid this escalation, employers need to be proactive. They need to foster an environment of open communication and trust. They need to acknowledge the validity of employee concerns and be open to exploring alternative work models that balance the needs of the business with the well-being and preferences of their workforce. This could include hybrid work models or flexible hours. Ignoring these quiet forms of protest won't make them disappear. It might simply drive them further underground, leading to a more pervasive sense of apathy and disengagement that is far more difficult to address. Employers must act now to prevent this from becoming the new norm. Navigating the new world of work. The coffee badging phenomenon, while seemingly trivial on the surface, reveals a much deeper struggle taking place in workplaces around the world. It's a small but telling sign of the larger shifts happening in how we view work and our place within it. It shines a light on the evolving relationship between employers and employees, a relationship grappling with the changing nature of work itself. This dynamic is more complex than ever, influenced by technology, societal expectations, and personal aspirations. The traditional office model, once the bedrock of productivity and corporate culture, is being challenged. The rigid structures that define the 9-to-5 workday are no longer seen as the only path to success. Employees, having tasted the freedom and flexibility of remote work, are reluctant to return to rigid structures and commutes. The daily grind of long commutes and fixed schedules feels increasingly outdated. They're seeking a better balance between their professional and personal lives. The pandemic has accelerated this shift, making people more aware of the value of time spent with loved ones and on personal interests. They crave autonomy and control over their work schedules and environments. This desire for flexibility is not just a passing trend, but a fundamental change in how people want to work. This desire isn't a sign of laziness or a lack of commitment. Instead, it reflects a deeper understanding of productivity and well-being. It's a reflection of changing priorities and a recognition that work is just one aspect of a fulfilling life, not the whole picture. People are redefining what success looks like, and it includes a more holistic approach to life. Employers, on the other hand, are grappling with a complex web of pressures. They must navigate the demands of a modern workforce while maintaining operational efficiency. They're tasked with maintaining productivity, fostering collaboration, and protecting their bottom line. Balancing these elements is no small feat, especially in a rapidly changing economic landscape. They're facing political pressure to revive urban centers and economic anxieties about real estate investments. The stakes are high, and the solutions are not always clear-cut. The challenge lies in reconciling these competing priorities with the evolving needs and expectations of their workforce. Finding a middle ground that satisfies both sides is crucial for long-term success. The path forward requires a fundamental shift in perspective. It calls for innovative thinking and a willingness to embrace new models of work. It demands that we move beyond the simplistic dichotomy of office work good, remote work bad, or vice versa. We must recognize the potential benefits and drawbacks of each approach. We need to acknowledge the nuances, the trade-offs, and the very real human needs at the heart of this debate. Only then can we create a work environment that is truly adaptive and supportive of everyone involved. Brewing a better future towards a more human-centered workplace. Addressing the tensions highlighted by coffee badging and other forms of quiet resistance isn't just about finding a compromise on where work happens. It's about creating a more human-centered workplace, one that values well-being, autonomy, and trust, alongside productivity and innovation. This means embracing flexibility and adaptability as core principles rather than exceptions to the rule. It means empowering employees to co-create work arrangements that meet their individual needs while still fulfilling the goals of the organization. Hybrid work models, flexible scheduling, and results-oriented performance evaluations can all play a role in this transition. It also means fostering open and honest communication. Employers need to actively listen to the concerns of their workforce and be willing to engage in meaningful dialogue about the future of work. This requires creating a culture of psychological safety where employees feel comfortable expressing their needs and concerns without fear of retribution. The coffee badging phenomenon, while born out of frustration and discontent, presents an opportunity for positive change. It's a chance to reimagine the workplace, not as a battleground for control and resistance, but as a space where individual well-being and collective success go hand in hand. By brewing a better future for work, we can create a more engaged, productive, and ultimately more human experience for everyone.